In the lively town of Uromi, there lived a young woman named Amara who carried dreams bigger than the sky above her. While other girls her age thought about marriage and family, Amara's heart was set on something different. She wanted to build a cocoa export business that would make her grandfather proud. From childhood, her grandfather had always told her, "One day, this land will be yours. Use it well." Those words became her guiding light. Every coin she earned from helping traders in the market, every little profit she saved, she tucked it away carefully with a vision in mind. She studied business from books borrowed from the town library, asked questions from old cocoa farmers, and even spent long nights sketching plans under a dim lantern. She was not just dreaming, she was preparing. But inside her home, things were never easy. Her parents showered praises on her brother Obinna, calling him the future of the family. Whenever Amara shared her ideas, they laughed softly and said, "This is not for women. You should be thinking about your husband's house, not cocoa beans." Those words cut deep, but Amara stayed quiet. She carried her pain like a secret, hiding it behind her hard-working smile. Still she believed. She held on to her grandfather's promise like a crown waiting for its rightful queen. To Amara, the farmland was not just soil. It was hope, legacy, and the key to proving that a woman's dream was just as powerful as any man's. One hot afternoon in Uromi, Amara was carrying baskets of cocoa pods into the storeroom when she heard her father's voice from the veranda. He was speaking with her uncle, his tone filled with pride. "Yes, I sold the farmland. The money will help Obinna's car dealership. He just needs a push, and soon he will lift this family's name." Amara froze. The basket slipped from her hands, cocoa pods scattering across the ground. For a moment she thought she had misheard. The farmland, the same land her grandfather had promised her since childhood. Her chest tightened as she crept closer, desperate to catch every word. Her uncle chuckled and said, "But wasn't that land meant for Amara?" Her father waved his hand carelessly. "She is just a woman. What will she do with farmland? Obinna is the future of this family." Tears burned in Amara's eyes, but anger pushed her forward. She stepped into the courtyard, her voice trembling. "Papa, how could you? That land was promised to me. Grandfather said it was mine." Her father's eyes hardened. Her mother looked away, silent as always. And Obinna smirked, leaning against the wall as if enjoying her pain. "You don't understand your place," her father said firmly. "A woman belongs in her husband's house. Land and business are for men. Your brother needs it more than you ever will." The words cut her like a sharp blade. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand tall. Obinna laughed cruelly, adding, "Even if you had the land, you would waste it. At least I can use it for business." At that moment, Amara felt the world collapse around her. The years of saving, planning, and holding on to her grandfather's promise shattered in an instant. The people she trusted most had stolen her future and handed it away like it meant nothing. She stumbled back, her eyes filled with silent tears. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Her father's words echoed in her head. "You are a woman. You are not the future." That night, Amara sat alone in her room, clutching her grandfather's photo. Her dreams lay broken, and the weight of betrayal pressed down on her chest. For the first time, she felt truly abandoned by her own blood. In the days that followed, the whole town of Uromi seemed to know Amara's secret. The news spread like wildfire. Her father had sold the land, and she had been left with nothing. Wherever she went, whispers followed her. Women at the market shook their heads with pity, while some men laughed openly, saying, "What use is land to a woman anyway?" Their words pierced her heart, but she kept walking, her head low, pretending not to hear. What hurt more was her own brother's cruelty. One evening, as Amara passed by Obinna's shop, he called out loudly for everyone around to hear. "Sister, why are you still sulking? That land was wasted on you. At least I can use it for business." His friends burst into laughter, their voices echoing like daggers in her chest. Amara's face burned with shame. She wanted to shout back, to tell him about her plans, her dreams, her sleepless nights, but her voice stuck in her throat. Home there was no comfort. Her mother avoided her eyes, pretending nothing was wrong. Her father walked around proudly, as if selling her inheritance was an achievement. Every corner of the compound reminded Amara that she no longer belonged, that her dreams had been dismissed as nothing. Each word, each laugh, each mocking glance from the villagers felt like a stab. These were the same people who had watched her grow, who had once praised her grandfather for promising her the land. Now they treated her as if she had been foolish to ever believe in it. One night, unable to sleep, Amara sat outside under the dim moonlight, hugging her knees to her chest. She thought of her grandfather's voice, strong and warm, telling her, "Never let anyone steal your crown." But right now, her crown felt stolen, crushed by the very people who should have protected her. The betrayal was more than she could bear. It wasn't just about land, it was about being told she did not matter, that her dreams, her hard work, her very existence as a woman, had no value. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as the laughter of the village replayed in her mind. For the first time, Amara wondered if her voice would ever be heard again. That night, when the compound had gone quiet and even the crickets seemed to sing of sorrow, Amara walked to the old iroko tree at the edge of her grandfather's land. The moonlight bathed the ground in silver, and the night breeze carried the faint smell of cocoa pods from distant farms. She sank to the earth, clutching the worn photograph of her grandfather to her chest. His gentle eyes stared back at her from the faded picture, and for a moment she felt like a little girl again, safe in his arms, hearing him say the words that had guided her since childhood, "Never let anyone steal your crown." But tonight her crown felt gone. Her family had taken it, her brother had mocked it, and the villagers had laughed at it. The pain was too heavy for her chest, and she let the tears fall freely, her sobs muffled in the still night air. Each tear carried anger, humiliation, and a heartbreak she never imagined would come from her own blood. Yet as the minutes passed, something began to shift inside her. The more she thought of her grandfather's words, the less broken she felt. His voice echoed in her heart, steady and firm like a drumbeat. "Your worth is not given by anyone. It is yours. Protect it." Amara wiped her tears and looked up at the tall branches of the iroko tree, standing strong against the wind. "They think they silenced me," she whispered to the night. "But they only woke me." Her voice trembled at first, but it grew stronger with every word. In that quiet darkness, grief gave way to fire. She realized she could no longer wait for her family's approval or recognition. If they had denied her the land, she would build her future from dust if she had to. If they had silenced her voice, she would rise louder than they ever imagined. Holding the photograph close, Amara made a vow under the stars. She would not be remembered as the girl who lost everything, she would be remembered as the woman who turned betrayal into power. And with that vow, the silent cry of her heart became the beginning of her roar. The next morning, Amara woke up with swollen eyes but a new kind of fire in her chest. She knew the land was gone, but her dreams were not. If her family had stripped her of her inheritance, she would build something from the ground with her own two hands. She started small, very small. With the little savings she had left, she went to struggling farmers in nearby villages, the ones who couldn't sell all their cocoa pods. She bought what they had left over, sometimes just a few baskets, and carried them to the market. Her stall was nothing grand, just a wooden table under a torn umbrella. While others mocked her, saying, "Look at the daughter of Uromi, reduced to a petty trader," Amara smiled quietly. She weighed the beans carefully, bargained smartly, and treated every customer with respect. She knew this was not her end, it was her beginning. First people laughed, some shook their heads, whispering, "How can she dream of cocoa exports when she sells leftovers in the market?" But slowly, things began to change. Customers noticed her honesty, her sharp calculations, and the way she never cheated anyone. Her stall grew busier, while others stood empty. Meanwhile, Obina's car dealership was sinking. The cars rusted in the lot, creditors knocked on his door, and yet he mocked Amara whenever he saw her. "Sister, is this your big dream? Selling scraps like a poor woman?" But behind his laughter was fear, because he could see what others were starting to whisper. "This girl is different." Week by week, Amara saved every coin, reinvesting carefully. She expanded to other markets, traveling farther, building trust with more farmers. Some even began to prefer selling to her rather than big buyers, because she treated them fairly. Her name started spreading quietly. Amara, the young woman who worked harder than anyone, the one who turned nothing into something. Each evening, as she counted her earnings, Amara remembered the Iroko tree and her grandfather's words. She knew the road ahead was still long, but one thing was certain: the seed of resistance had been planted. What had begun as a small stall was slowly becoming a storm, and soon no one would be able to laugh at her again. Amara's small beginning soon grew into something no one in Uromi could ignore. Her stall became 2, then 3. Farmers who once struggled to sell their harvest now came directly to her, trusting her fairness and quick payments. She built relationships quietly but firmly, and within a year, her name was on the lips of traders far beyond her village. One afternoon, as she was arranging sacks of cocoa in the market, a man in a crisp suit approached her. He was a representative of a large exporter from Benin City. "We have been watching your work," he said with a smile. "You are consistent, reliable, and trusted by farmers. We want you to supply cocoa for us." Amara's heart raced. This was the chance she had been dreaming of, the door to something far greater than a market stall. She agreed, her hands trembling with excitement, but her eyes shining with determination. That same day, Obinna sat in the family compound, his face buried in his palms. His car dealership was collapsing, creditors were on his neck, and nothing he tried seemed to work. Desperate, he turned to their father. "Papa, I need more money. If you can just help me this time, I will turn it around." Their father's face fell. He had already sold the farmland for Obinna's sake. He had sacrificed Amara's future, believing his son was the family's hope. But now, all he saw was failure staring back at him. The money was gone, the land was gone, and Obinna's business was nothing but debts and broken promises. Meanwhile, word spread quickly about Amara's new contract in Benin City. Neighbors whispered in awe, "This girl has done what even men could not." Some villagers who once mocked her now nodded in respect when she passed. Her parents sat in silence, realizing the bitter truth: they had robbed their daughter of her inheritance for nothing. The son they placed all their faith in had failed, while the daughter they dismissed had risen from ashes without their help. And as the sun set over Uromi, Amara prepared for her first major supply. The storm she had planted in silence was now gathering strength. What her family thought was weakness had become power, and soon the whole region would see it. Amara's small beginning soon grew into something no one in Uromi could ignore. Her stall became 2, then 3. Farmers who once struggled to sell their harvest now came directly to her, trusting her fairness and quick payments. She built relationships quietly but firmly, and within a year, her name was on the lips of traders far beyond her village. One afternoon, as she was arranging sacks of cocoa in the market, a man in a crisp suit approached her. He was a representative of a large exporter from Benin City. "We have been watching your work," he said with a smile. "You are consistent, reliable, and trusted by farmers. We want you to supply cocoa for us." Amara's heart raced. This was the chance she had been dreaming of, the door to something far greater than a market stall. She agreed, her hands trembling with excitement, but her eyes shining with determination. That same day, Obinna sat in the family compound, his face buried in his palms. His car dealership was collapsing, creditors were on his neck, and nothing he tried seemed to work. Desperate, he turned to their father. "Papa, I need more money. If you can just help me this time, I will turn it around." Their father's face fell. He had already sold the farmland for Obinna's sake. He had sacrificed Amara's future, believing his son was the family's hope. But now, all he saw was failure staring back at him. The money was gone, the land was gone, and Obinna's business was nothing but debts and broken promises. Meanwhile, word spread quickly about Amara's new contract in Benin City. Neighbors whispered in awe, "This girl has done what even men could not." Some villagers who once mocked her now nodded in respect when she passed. Her parents sat in silence, realizing the bitter truth: they had robbed their daughter of her inheritance for nothing. The son they placed all their faith in had failed, while the daughter they dismissed had risen from ashes without their help. And as the sun set over Uromi, Amara prepared for her first major supply. The storm she had planted in silence was now gathering strength. What her family thought was weakness had become power, and soon the whole region would see it. The day of the harvest festival arrived, and the whole town gathered in the square. Drummers played, dancers filled the air with joy, and leaders of the community sat proudly in their seats. It was the time of year when families were honored for their contributions, and everyone expected Obinna to be called up as the shining son of Uromi. His parents dressed him in fine clothes, hoping to restore the pride that his failing business had stolen. But when the mayor stood on stage, his voice rang out with a different name. This year we honor Amara, the youngest cocoa supplier in Edo State, a woman whose strength has lifted not only herself but also our farmers. The crowd erupted in cheers. People clapped, shouted her name, and rushed forward to see the woman who had turned shame into glory. Amara walked onto the stage in a simple but elegant dress, her head held high. The same villagers who once mocked her now stretched out their hands to greet her. Her parents sat frozen, their faces pale with embarrassment. Obinna looked down, unable to meet her eyes. When the cheers quieted, Amara stepped forward to speak. Her voice was steady, but it carried the weight of fire. When they sold what was mine, they thought they buried me, but they only planted me. And today, I stand not as the daughter they silenced, but as the woman they could not destroy. The words struck the crowd like thunder. Murmurs of agreement rose instantly. Even the elders, who often favored tradition, nodded in respect. She speaks truth, one of them said. The shame of her parents' favoritism was laid bare in front of everyone. Amara's eyes swept across the crowd, landing on her family. To every girl who has been told her dreams are too small, know this: your crown is yours. No one can take it unless you hand it away. The applause shook the square as women wiped tears and men bowed their heads in acknowledgement. That day, Amara's voice became more than her own. It became a voice for every daughter who had ever been silenced. And as the cheers rose around her, her parents shrank deeper into their seats, realizing the daughter they dismissed had become the pride of the entire community. Obinna's downfall came faster than anyone expected. His car dealership, once the pride of the family, was now nothing but empty promises and rusting vehicles. Creditors crowded his shop, shouting for their money. Some dragged him out into the street, embarrassing him in front of neighbors who once hailed him as the future of the family. The proud son of Uromi was now a man drowning in debts, his name dragged through the mud. While Obinna's world crumbled, Amara's empire was rising higher each day. Her cocoa contracts in Benin City brought steady income, and her reputation spread like wildfire. Farmers trusted her, exporters respected her, and even traders in distant towns spoke of her name with admiration. Every sack of cocoa she sold was a brick in the foundation of the life she was building for herself. After years of hard work, the moment she had dreamed of finally arrived. With her profits, Amara walked into the land office and signed the papers to buy back her grandfather's farmland. But this time, the deed carried only one name, her own. She left the office with tears in her eyes, holding the document tightly, as if holding her grandfather's promise once again. That evening she returned home. The family sat at the table, heavy with silence. Obinna sulked in a corner, his pride shattered. Her parents looked worn with regret, their earlier confidence gone. Amara placed the deed on the table with steady hands. Her voice was calm but filled with power. "This land is mine again, not because you gave it to me but because I fought for it." The words hung in the air like a sword. Her father lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. Her mother's lips trembled, but no words came. Obinna's fists clenched, but even he knew the truth. His sister had won back what was rightfully hers. Amara looked at the farmland document, then at her family. "You tried to bury me," she said softly, "but all you did was plant me." The room fell into silence, heavy with shame. For the first time, her family understood what they had lost. Not just land, but the chance to stand beside a woman who had turned betrayal into victory. Amara had reclaimed not only the soil but also her crown. Years passed, and the girl who once sat crying under the Irako tree became a woman whose name carried power across the region. Amara's cocoa company grew into one of the largest in Edo State. What began with a small stall of leftover beans was now a vast enterprise, with warehouses, trucks, and contracts reaching beyond Nigeria. Her factory gates buzzed with life every morning. Men and women lined up to work, many of them women who had once been told their place was only in the kitchen. Amara gave them opportunities, training, and fair wages, making sure no woman would ever feel as silenced as she once did. Farmers trusted her, families respected her, and young girls spoke her name as a symbol of what was possible. Her success was not just about cocoa, it was about dignity, about rewriting what it meant to be a daughter in a world that often valued sons more. People no longer whispered behind her back. Instead, they pointed proudly and said, "That is Amara, the golden daughter of Uromi." One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the factory walls in gold, Amara stood at the gates, watching workers file out with laughter and pride. She closed her eyes, remembering her grandfather's words, the betrayal of her family, the nights of tears, and the battle she had fought to get here. With a deep breath, she whispered to herself, "They tried to silence me, but now the world hears my voice." And in that moment, Amara knew her crown had never been given to her. It was the crown of her own making, forged through pain, courage, and the unbreakable fire of a woman who refused to be buried.